Shalom, and welcome to the Parasha Pod. I'm Rav Mordechai Rosenberg, very happy to be here with Rav Menachem Leibtag, and we are talking Torah together. Wherever you are, whatever you're up to, it's time to learn. So, Rav Leibtag.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's a great privilege, and I'm really grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for agreeing. And I'm really looking forward to getting into this podcast together, delving into some of the questions that have been on my mind for a long time and recently about the various parashiot and the chagim and other matters related to Judaism as well, and hoping to help some of our listeners and viewers with some of the questions that they might have, something that they could discuss at their own Shabbos tables or Yom Tov tables. So
I like teaching, you like asking. That's good.
That's good. So I know you as one of the great Tanakh teachers of our time, one of my personal teachers in Tanakh. I've learned much of your stuff from you, some of your stuff from your website over the years. But you didn't start where you are now. Come from a small town in America.
Akron, Ohio.
So how does that happen? How do you get from being a small town in America, Akron, Ohio, to one of the great Tanakh masters of our time?
That's basically by accident.
Go on.
My father was a shul rabbi.
Mm-hmm.
I went away for high school, went to Israel, everyone else did.
Yeah.
Got brainwashed. Went to college here, did Hesder, because I was here for the Yom Kippur War. And after my Hesder, I was going to continue in the Army in my field in electro-optics. And then I got married. I stayed another year in yeshiva. By chance, they needed a madrich to take care of Americans. And then I liked learning. And then I organized some programs for the overseas boys. And then I was searching for teachers, the teachers I had, but they all moved on. Mm-hmm. And basically, I couldn't find anyone to teach. So I said, I'll give it a try. And basically, I'll give the advice I tell everybody. When they ask me, what's the best way to learn a book? Find someone to teach it to. Because the best way to learn something is to teach something. Right. So I have lots of my own teachers, Rabbi Yoel Ben Nun, Rabbi Yaakov Meidan, Rabbi Mordechai Breuer, but all my yeshiva people. And I really wasn't into it much when I first came to yeshiva. I was a Baal Koreh, so I knew psukim and stuff, but I was just amazed how things started to make sense. You know, it wasn't just psukim, but there was like a theme to a book and a theme to an idea. I liked that, and then I started teaching it to my students. And then they liked it, and sort of happened by accident and became a teacher.
Nice. So, you know, you don't know this, but one of the great memories that I have of you is from about 15 years ago. I haven't told you this, that I went to a shir by Rav Yoel Ben Nun, and you were there handing out chumashim, like an excited Talmud. Mm-hmm. And I think you made an aside to me at the time. Listen carefully. These guys are the best. And I was like, okay. So how did these people that you met, like Rav Yoel Ben Nun, Rav Meidan, Rav Breuer, how did these people influence the way that you learn Tanakh?
Simply, I went to their classes, and it made a lot of sense to me, and it was eye-opening. Mm-hmm. And when learning happens, when you're involved in something, when you're excited about it, when things make sense. So I just got into it.
What about like their methodology? Have you adopted their style and methodology?
The way I understand Rabbi Yoel Ben Nun's methodology, which is the main one I follow, is that every book has a prophetic theme and a purpose, and you study a book, not the story, and you try to study and make it sense. But in a nutshell, Chumash is a book to study, not read. In other words, it wasn't written like Shulchan Aruch, like a code of law where here's what you do, ABC. Mm-hmm. You study the book, and the message is not only in what's written, it's in how it's written, how it's presented. And basically, you need to study the book to get its message. Now, why God did that, that's another question. But that's our rabbinic tradition. I'd like to differentiate between objective analysis. Mm-hmm. We analyze the psukim, which is objective. You can argue, but you can pretty much try and prove. Otherwise, it wouldn't be objective. Then the next step is to suggest a subjective interpretation based on an objective analysis. Mm-hmm. And that's where people get confused a lot, because you have to always distinguish between this objectively That's what's written. That's what's here. What's the meaning of it? We argue. That's our rabbinic tradition. Now, who has the license to suggest subjective interpretation? That's a great argument. Can we only study what other people did, maybe up to 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 50 years ago? Or are we allowed to suggest our own? No, but our Jewish tradition is every generation tries its best to try to understand Chumash and Nevi'im to the best of their ability and apply it to the best of their ability to day-to-day Jewish life. Now, we argue how to apply it, but at least we all agree that it's a book to study and apply. And we should do it maturely, honestly. And I think God wants us to argue. That's how we grow.
I feel like there's more there in terms of like your own position about, the freedom to interpret the Tanakh anew. Say things that nobody else has.
No, that's the biggest mistake. Right?
Okay.
What happens in academia, I think, what I don't like about academia, when you write a paper for MA or for a PhD, if I'm not mistaken, you have to come up with something that no one ever said before.
Right.
And therefore, when most people in academia are studying something or writing a paper, they have to make sure no one else said that before. And therefore, they're looking for a chiddush. They're looking for something new. And their whole goal is to find something no one ever said before.
Right.
And then it's like someone with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So they're forcing their reading, looking for that chiddush.
Right.
My approach is look for understanding, let the chiddush find you. Don't look for a chiddush.
The novelty.
The chiddush, the novelty. Right? Don't search for something new, something that no one ever said before. Search for what everyone else said before. Study the text.
Right.
Search for understanding. Don't look for questions. They'll find you. Try your best for the text to make sense. In your search for trying to make sense out of the text, the questions will find you. But don't look for questions. Look for understanding.
But you do say plenty of things that other people.
But it happened not in search of something new. In search of, I know, maybe I don't admit I do that, but I try not to.
Right.
I try not to. I try to understand it, and I try to do my best to understand. But anything I've come up with, it's usually not in search of something new that no one ever said before. Because when you're searching for a chiddush, then you're going to be blinded, and sometimes a lot of times it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Now, the best test is you come up with something, and then first of all, you give an assignment, and if after presenting the material, a lot of people come up with the same conclusion, now that's a sign that it's right, there's something good there. Also, when you explain it, the test is basically the Beit Midrash, the Jewish study hall. When you have an idea, an opinion, what made Rashi, Ramban, all the great commentators great, they said things, and people, it became popular, it went viral.
Right.
And that's what makes them great. So the Am Yisrael decides what's accepted, what's legitimate, what's not legitimate. Now, who's Am Yisrael? That's another question. But the goal was to study Chumash, and God wants us to do that and try to understand our best at it. Plus, we have a lot of new tools nowadays. Probably one of the biggest differences is over the last 50 years, 100 years, is the return of the Jewish people to their land, which brings more thematic story. And maybe we'll discuss a one-time whole topic on that, of what caused this revolution in Tanakh study. Has a lot to do with the founding of the state of Israel and fulfilling the prophecies, but that's not our topic today.
Right. Okay. So in short, don't search for a chiddush. Have objective analysis and then apply a subjective opinion.
First, try to understand what other people said.
Right.
And in your search for understand what everyone else said. If you don't do the objective analysis, you won't understand the commentators.
Right.
Now, what the commentators do, they share with you their subjective interpretation. They assumed you did objective analysis. What I do in class, the main thing I try to teach my students is how to do the objective analysis, how to study a unit, how to identify how to study a unit. And then in study of that unit, questions will come up naturally. Not because you look for them, that'll happen. And then 9 out of 10 times, one of the commentators, if not all the commentators, are going to relate to that question.
Right.
But they assume that that question bothered you. And they share with you their subjective interpretation. They didn't walk you through the objective analysis, but they're assuming you did it. And most students don't do the objective analysis, and that's why they don't understand the commentators or appreciate their arguments. My goal as a teacher is to teach the methodology of how to do objective analysis, how to read a text critically and try to understand it. And remembering it's the Word of God. This is the text God gave us to study. That's how we grow as a Jewish people. And we have to argue maturely, within certain boundaries, etc. But the goal is to study. That's our Jewish tradition.
Nice. Okay.
Let's get to work.
Yeah. So let's open up. We're talking about Sukkot and Simchat Torah. So I've got a lot of questions about the Sukkot and the Chagim.
The Torah reading.
The Torah reading. Okay. Yeah. I think that the first one is just, we've got so many places to choose from when it comes to the Torah reading for Sukkot. I mean, one of the main ones we choose is from Vayikra, Leviticus, Parasha Emor.
Chapter 23.
Right. Well, and a bit of 22, right?
He's added 22, yeah. That's a segue.
But like, why is the Chagim spread all over the Torah? I mean, except for Bereshit, right? I mean, there's a bit we do from Shemot.
Yeah, we have in Parshat Mishpatim, we have the Shalosh Regalim as a unit at the end of chapter 23, after 3 chapters of laws. Mm-hmm. That's the first mention. We have the story of the Exodus and the Passover holiday, and Chag HaMatzot. That's in the story of the Exodus. Mm-hmm. But the holidays as a unit are first presented in Shemot, in Parshat Mishpatim, at the end of a whole set of laws, primarily between man and man, in the framework of becoming God's people and entering a covenant at Har Sinai. That covenant was broken, remember, and then those laws are repeated after the sin of the golden calf, because the main law of the holidays is come visit God.
Right. So we have the laws twice in Shemot.
In Shemot. In Kitita. It's before, when we first get the laws at Har Sinai, together with the 10 Commandments, and then we have the story of the golden calf, and then everything's broken. Mm-hmm. Moshe argues to renew the covenant, and indeed, God gives him a new covenant, the second luchot, the second tablets, with attributes of mercy. And then instead of repeating all the laws of Parshat Mishpatim, he only repeats the laws between God and man, which is primarily the law of the 3 pilgrimage holidays. Mm-hmm. And I think the chiddush is, even though you've sinned, you can still come visit me. It's not the same relationship like in the beginning where everything was perfect. We went through a crisis. We got over the crisis. You're still my people. We have a new covenant, but you're still welcome to visit. And I want you to come visit me during the 3 critical times of the agricultural year.
And is that kind of like a symbol for the rest of the Chagim, like throughout history, that, we have the Chagim in a sort of perfect, ideal kind of sense, and we also have the Chagim given the fact that we've sinned, and we schlep ourselves to
that's life,
Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and
you raise the children, you think it'll be perfect, and then life happens, and then we learn from our mistakes. It's called post-traumatic growth.
Post-traumatic growth, nice. And so so that, would you say that's like the message of those 2 things in Shemot? That's 2 references in Shemot?
So again, what's objective? Mm-hmm. Objective is that the Shalosh Regalim are presented as a unit twice in Sefer Shemot. Mm-hmm. Once at the end of Parshat Mishpatim at the set of laws, right before we make this covenant of saying Nasa Benishma, accepting the covenant with the whole ceremony. And then they're repeated again, almost identical with slight little changes, after the story of the sin of the golden calf and the second tablets, the second covenant with God's attributes of mercy. Mm-hmm. And when they're repeated pretty much, that's the main thing that's being repeated. And not all the laws between man and his fellow man, but just those laws. And I think the reason is because even though we've gone through this crisis, God's saying, you can still come visit me. Right. You're still welcome and you can still be my people. But it's a new type of relationship. In fact, on Shabbat Chol Hamoed, we always read for Parshat Kitisa.
Right.
No matter which holidays. Shabbat Chol Hamoed, on Sukkot, or for or Chag HaMatzot, either one. Why? Because in Parshat Kitisa, we have the Shlosh Regalim, but they're presented first Chag HaMatzot, and then Shabbat, and then Shavuot and Sukkot. So it's Shabbat. Shabbat is recorded in Chumash in the middle of the Moedim. So it's like Shabbat in the middle of the Moedim. It's sort of so the rabbis picked up on that, and that's why that's the best reading for Shabbat.
I always wondered about that Shabbat reading, why we start so early with the end of the golden calf story. Like we don't read just the bit about.
First you need 5 aliyahs, or Shabbos needs 7 aliyahs.
Right.
So but you need at least 3 psukim for each one. So you're.
But is what you're saying kind of like the idea that the whole point of that version of the Chagim is, even though we've sinned, God still wants us to visit Him.
Wait, and this will we begin with Moshe's argument, where at the Mary line. Look, you got Moshe basically I'd like to say one could argue that to pray is to argue. You're arguing, not arguing, God, you're wrong, I'm right, but rather you're arguing your case with God. And if God sees you're sincere in your argument, he'll answer your prayer, your request, because he sees your sincerity. Moshe is demanding that God bring his Shekhinah back and dwell with him. That's because God said, okay, I won't kill you because it'll be a desecration of God's name, but I'm not going to be, you can't work for me. And Moshe argues, and God says, go to Israel, but don't come with me. I'm not coming with you.
Right.
And Moshe said, if you don't come with us, we're staying here. We're not going. And you're committed to your covenant with your ancestors. We have to get the land of Israel. And I'm not going to fulfill that covenant. I'm not going to bring the people to Israel if you don't come with us. God said, if I come with you, I'll kill you, etc. Remember, Moshe says, no, come with us and don't kill us. And God basically has to change his agreement, his contract, with the ability to be forgiving.
Right.
And therefore we have what's called the second luchot. And that, in light of that, we can still become God's people. We can still come and visit, remember that. And therefore, we can take the holiday season, not just to thank God for our, whatever we're thanking God for, depending on what the agricultural season is, or remembering what God did for us, but to remembering the essence of our relationship with God. And the whole idea of prayer, and that's what we do on Shabbat and Chagim. We dedicate what's the meaning of the holiday. We argue, we reflect on where we're going, where we're coming from, where we're going to. But beginning with Moshe's argument, where he convinces God, give us another chance, it's a great topic to discuss when you come to shul and hear the Torah reading.
Great. I think I've understood now something that I've never understood ever, which is why we start the whole bit of the Chagim that we read on Shabbat, Chol Hamoed, why we start that so early and include that whole aftermath of the golden calf, because the whole thing is, even after you've sinned, God still wants to see you. There's the formation of this relationship based off not only what we should do, but also the forgiveness even when we make mistakes.
But it's not just forgiving like rolling dice, maybe, but rather God is willing to forgive if you're sincere, if you can learn from your mistakes,
right,
and you can show God your sincerity, he's willing to give you another chance.
Nice. Okay, thank you. So with the Kriya, with the Torah reading that we do on Sukkot,
first day Sukkot,
and second day Sukkot in Chutz La'aretz, outside Israel, which is from Vayikra, from Leviticus.
Parasha Emor, chapter 23.
So I've always wondered why we start with this shor or kesev or ez ki valed. This whole thing about you have to keep an animal with its mother, and then we talk about
for 7 days, and then only after 8 days you can shecht it.
Exactly. So and then this idea of the korban todah, the Thanksgiving offering, which is not connected to a festival. We don't start with the festival. The festivals only start in chapter 23. But we start reading from before.
And we have been a psukim for 5 aliyahs.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what are we doing there?
So there's a technical answer, because on the holidays we bring sacrifices. It says Vikrafta Mishel Hashem. And these are the animals that you're allowed to bring. You can bring a shor, a cow, or a lamb, but you can't bring the animal until it's at least 8 days old. Which is a nice law. You can discuss why that is. And also you can't shecht an animal and its child on the same day, which also makes sense. Then the love todam. So that's a technical reason, because also, let's say when you come to the temple, you bring a korban todah, a Thanksgiving offering.
Right.
So you have only 1 day to eat it. But then the summary there is a thematic answer, because what's it say? Keep all my mitzvot. Okay, Ushmarta mitzvotai, and do them. Ani Hashem. So and then we go back to
chapter 22,
verses 31, 32, 33, the end of chapter 22, which serves as a segue into the holidays. And we go back, revert to the bigger theme of Chumash. Don't disgrace my name. In other words, we're chosen to sanctify God's name. Basically, don't do a lousy job. It's a third commandment. Don't carry God's name in vain. It's in the contract. Okay? V'nikdashti. Remember? You be a mamlechet kohen v'goy kadosh. Sanctify me through your day-to-day behavior as a nation. And then I can become sanctified among the people of Israel. Again, Ani Hashem mekadishchem. That's Mount Sinai. Okay. And then Hamotzi etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim. I'm the guy who took you out of Egypt to be your God.
How is that Mount Sinai? Ani Hashem mekadishchem.
How is it not Mount Sinai?
But you could
Mount Sinai is not just the 10 Commandments. That's the contract. Before we enter the contract, God says, look what in chapter 19 in Shemot, look what I did for you. I brought you here. And now, are you willing to obey me? Shemot tishmu b'koli. Right. God makes his proposition. Ushmartem et briti, will you be my covenantal nation? Okay? And you'll be my skula, you'll be my my treasure nation. Basically, you're working for me, even though I'm the God of all the land. Vatem tuli, you'll be for me, if you accept that responsibility, mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh. A nation separated in the service of God, and a nation, a Kohen represents a God, and we represent God not that everyone's a rabbi, but rather we're a priestly nation, not a nation of priests. Meaning, almost every God in the Bible or any religion is represented by a Kohen, by a minister.
Right.
No matter who the God is, whether he exists or not. But every God isn't known unless he has a minister working for him. That's a Kohen.
Right.
Like Melchizedek is Kohen Teloyon, Potiphar, Kohen Yitro is Kohen Midyan. Somebody in the service of a higher authority is a Kohen. Now, the Chiddush, the revolutionary idea of Chumash is that this one God, our one God, the God of creation, instead of being represented by an individual, he's being represented by a nation. And that makes that covenant eternal, because nations can be eternal if they keep that tradition going. Individuals come and go up to 120. You can't represent God forever as an individual, but as a nation, every Jew, part of being Jewish is keeping it going. That's why teaching children is so critical. And that's why having a nation, having a land, having a culture, having laws, honoring parents, honoring tradition, it's not, we have to be Jewish. And part of being Jewish is keeping it going. That's Jewish education, that's having children, bringing up a family. That's why the first mitzvah is to build a bite, coming out of Egypt.
So the fact that the covenant is with
the
fact that the covenant is with us as a nation is what makes it, enables it to be an eternal covenant.
Yeah. It's called a Brit Olam, big theme in Chumash.
Right. Okay.
Now, we need constant reminders of that, called positive reinforcement of that idea. And then we take the critical times of the agricultural year, and we come to remember our experience at Har Sinai. So the Har Sinai experience, I'd like to give the example, is that the model I like to use, a lot of people view that Judaism, we're consumers and God's our provider. Right? If you follow Chumash, you're considered everywhere, we're employees and God's our boss. We sing it on Yom Kippur, we're going to sing about it. Anu amecha, Eloheinu, anu banecha. There's a lot of analogies, but we're working for God.
Right. As one of my other teachers used to say, God is not a vending machine.
Yeah.
Right.
Even though a lot of people treat him that way.
Yeah.
Sometimes things are on sale, like on Yom Kippur, like you can get away with all the sales are on.
Right.
That's like that. Yom Kippur, you're remembering that in your relationship with God, he can forgive you, but you have to be worthy of his forgiveness. He can forgive. That's true all year long, but when I dedicate a holiday to internalizing that idea that we are God's people, we want to show God we're his people, and we're thankful that the covenant is eternal. That's tremendous responsibility. But the holidays are remembering the essence of our chosenness and why we're chosen. I think we say, right.
Yeah. You mean in
our prayer, every Yom Tov Davening, the Shosh Regalim, and the holidays, and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, it says, we remember you chose us, and we thank God for choosing out of love. But the you brought us closer to serve you. And your reputation, your reputation is running on our behavior.
Interesting. So what you're saying is that Atav Achartanu Tefillah that is common to all the prayers of all the Chagim, all the festivals.
It's our mission statement.
Mission statement, which is the same point as this thematic conclusion.
That's exactly. That's the thematic reason. Yeah.
V'nikdashti b'toch.
You're working for me. Don't do a lousy job. V'nikdashti. Keep my laws. It starts with Ushmartem mitzvotai. Keep my laws. Keep my guidelines, which will be included here. And remember, Ani Hashem Mekadishchem, remember your commitment at Har Sinai. And then we just quote the first 10 commandments. Now, speaking of davening, I think you,
quoting the first of the 10 Commandments, are you referring to? So that is what you're saying when Ani Hashem.
The opening statement is Asher Teitetchem Eretz Mitzrayim.
Okay, so that's the conclusion. That's the end of verse 32.
I took you out of Egypt so you could work for me. You're not working for me because I took you out of Egypt. I took you out. I put you into Egypt to take you out of Egypt to train you to be my nation. That's Brit Ben Abtarim.
How does being in Egypt train us to be Hashem's nation?
Read the Bible. Basically,
we became less Hashem's nation. We started serving idols in Egypt.
No, but God wanted us to go through. He told Avram when he made the first covenant with Avram Avinu, called the covenant of the parts, the chapter 15 in Bereshit. He told Avram, "You're going to become a nation, It might take some 400 years, but before you become a nation and have your own land and become a nation, you need to go through this collective experience of suffering, of servitude, of being mistreated by a foreign power. And you have to know what it means like to be mistreated as a stranger in someone else's land, as a servant, as a slave in someone else's land. You experience that, you remember that experience, and you grow from it. It's what I call post-traumatic growth. That you remember how you were mistreated, and when God blesses you with a land and nationhood, don't you dare do that to other people. You're going to sanctify God by being a nation forever, but in your nation, the way you treat the less fortunate, the way you treat migrants, the way you treat your workers, the way you treat the society that you build, the chesed, the kindness that you do, the way, again, how you celebrate your holidays, what you do with your wealth, etc. You need to be a prosperous nation. What you do with your prosperity, the goal is not to be prosperous. The goal is to serve God, and prosperity becomes a tool through which you can serve God, which is, we'll see, that's exactly what Parashat Emor is about. We'll see in a minute.
So in other words, the point of being vulnerable is to know to care for the vulnerable.
Yeah. In fact, remember the first time the Shlosh Regalim are mentioned in Shemot chapter 23?
Yeah.
There's a couple of verses right beforehand. Right before Shlosh Regalim Tcholi Bashana, there's the line of Bidvar Sheker Tirchak, stay away from, and not to take bribes. And then it says, V'ger lo terchatz, don't oppress a stranger. Vatem yedatem nefesh hager, chapter 23, verse 9 in Shemot, in the book of Exodus. It says, you know what it feels like to be a stranger, Kigerim hayitem be'eretz Mitzrayim, because you were strangers in Egypt. In other words, take that negative experience, and basically, it's not the history of our redemption. Egypt is the redemption of our history. We take our suffering, and we use that as an educational tool. And therefore, as we'll see in Parashat Emor, when you're harvesting your field, the 7 weeks of your grain harvest is from Chag HaMatzot, is the 7 weeks that we call Sfirat Omer. Yeah, basically, it's those 7 weeks we remember. We wave the Omer, we do, and we count the Omer during 7 weeks. That's exactly the 7 weeks of our grain harvest. But
Hold on.
In the land of Israel, in case you weren't aware, in the land of Israel, grain doesn't grow 24 all year long.
Right.
There's only 2 months of grain harvest a year, but that grain has to last me the whole year. If not, we're in big trouble. There's a book remember our ancestors didn't have grain, had to go down to Egypt.
Right.
There's a river. Here, because of the climate and the lack of rain in the summer, the only time you can harvest your grain is between mid-April and mid-June. That's it. And that happens to coincide with what we call Sfirat Omer, the 7 weeks between, we call Pesach and Shavuot. Now, we have all these laws, this symbolic act we do in the temple. We wave our first grain, the first barley. Right. We're so happy it's ready, it's ripe. We've been waiting 10 months for this.
Right.
And then we have all these laws of what to do and a special sacrifice to bring.
Which incidentally we talk about right now in this Torah reading.
In the Torah reading for Sukkot.
Right.
Why? Because Sukkot is the end of our grain, is the end of our fruit harvest. But it's the same, it's still an agricultural holiday. But
so you're saying it's part of the same trajectory?
It's the same trajectory, which begins with remembering you were a slave in Egypt. But listen what it says in chapter 23, after the 7 weeks. In verse 15, it's count the 7 weeks. We all know, we quote this by heart every time when we count the Omer. Skip to verse 21, Pasach Chav Aleph, Ukratem betzem hayom hazeh. On this day when you bring the 2 loaves of bread and the other animals, a special korban, a special sacrifice. Caught in this day, Mikro Kodesh Elechem, day of gathering. Don't do any work, okay? Chukat olam, b'chol moshetem dortem. For all generations, wherever you're living, have these 7 weeks. We call this holiday called Shavuot. Now, and then we copy-paste a verse that we had in chapter 19 from Kedoshim to you, which is applying the idea of it. It says as follows, when you're harvesting your grain, okay, don't take everything, leave over a little corner of your field, we call that peah.
Yeah.
Don't take everything. And the part that you aren't leaving over, the part you're taking, don't be a miser, everything, leave over.
Yep.
Give a little, there's a whole Megillah about it, called Megillah Ruth, which we read on Shabbat. The way you thank God for your harvest, it's not by saying thank you, by acting thank you. So in every stage in your harvest process, right? When you're first gathering those bundles the first time around, when you're just cutting the wheat, if a stalk or 2 fall down, leave it there. Let someone else pick it up. Let him do it himself. Get a little honor for him. Okay? And when you have your bundles on the field, you bring them to the threshing floor. If a bundle falls down, kol shichacha. Can't forget that. You have, leave that over. And then part of your field, leave over a whole section of your field. How much? When we make a blessing on Torah study every morning, we quote that Mishnah.
Right.
These are things that have no shiur, what's the word shiur? No minimum amount, no maximum amount. It's up to you. Why? You can't quantify tzedakah. Tzedakah is a way of life. And what Chumash is doing, again, the sample Chumash is giving is if you're living in an agricultural society, as a farmer, it's not, I have to give X amount of money or X amount of percent and give it. No, every stage of your harvesting process, when you're making that first bundle, when you're gathering your bundles, when you're finishing your field, you're always aware of the less fortunate people. It's a way of life. It's training you. And therefore, I can't quantify it.
Right.
Okay? And we mentioned when we study Torah, that's the Mishnah we quote. So Talmud Torah, the same thing. How much do you have to learn? That's up to you. But tzedakah is a way of life and kindness. And this part, and we sanctify God by taking our prosperity and using it. We almost become like trustees with our prosperity. And by using our prosperity properly and building a just society, always sensitive to the needs of others, don't be like Egypt, who took advantage of migrants, who took advantage of less fortunate people, where everything was about power and strength and wealth. It's important to be wealthy, but wealth becomes a tool through which you can serve God. I don't serve God to become wealthy. If God blessed me with wealth, that's a tool where I can use that to serve God. That's not so, it's easier said than done. But that verse right here in the holidays is key. We just read it like, it's the end of the Aliyah. I think we stop in the Aliyah there. Then we have the high holidays after that. But that's the 7 weeks of Sfirat Omer.
Then I suppose that also explains why we talk about Sfirat Omer on Sukkot, because we are actually trying to remind ourselves of not what happened on Sukkot, but the point of all the Chagim, which is to remember our role as Hashem's people in caring for the vulnerable.
Yeah. Now, ask anybody, why do we sit in a sukkah?
Because we sat in Sukkot when we went out from Mitzrayim.
What's the pasuk say? Sukkot teshvu shivat yamim. It's right at the end of Parasha Emor, right?
Right.
It's on, most people have it written on the sukkah.
Yeah.
But they have to read it carefully. But Sukkot, verse 42.
Right.
Sukkot teshvu shivat yamim.
Chol ezach b'Yisrael yeshvu b'Sukkot.
Every citizen, means everyone has land, etc., has to live in the sukkah. Why?
Right. L'man yedu toratechem.
You know what that means.
So
to know in the biblical sense, to have a deep understanding of something. Okay? Key?
Not the classic meaning of the knowing in the biblical sense.
Rambam's the first mitzvah is to know God in the biblical sense. That's a close, deep connection.
Intimate
connection of working together, a partnership.
Right. Okay. Kiva Sukkot Shavti et Bnei Yisrael, because in Sukkot I made Bnei Yisrael dwell.
Oh, now listen carefully. Hoshafti. It's not you were stuck in the desert and I took care of you. I put you through that desert experience. I made you suffer in Sukkot. Got it? I made you suffer through the desert to know what it feels like to be dependent on others, because we couldn't make our own living in the desert. We were dependent on the manna.
So to know what it feels like to be dependent on others. So now we care for others.
Now, in case I think I'm making it up, Moshe Rabbeinu, pretty serious prophet, in Sefer Devarim in chapter 8, explains exactly the reason. He didn't call it Sukkot. He says in chapter 8, verse 2, he tells the people, "V'zachartet kol haderech asher holichacha Hashem Elokecha 40 shana b'midbar." Remember your desert experience for these last 40 years. Okay, L'man anotcha lanasotcha. I sort of tortured you. That's a bad word, right? I made life miserable for you, hard for you, to test you, lanasotcha, to know will you follow God or not. That was our basic training. Right? Like you want to train a doctor, you got to go through, what's called stage. You have to start. You want to train a soldier, you got to work hard. Want to break up a child? Sometimes not good to spoil them. Now, hard work pays off, but it's through that experience you grow through experiences. That's the way. Now, in theory, we might have to. Every generation might have to suffer. So, if we study our suffering and internalize the message without having to go through the suffering, we won't need to go through the suffering. If we don't apply that message, just read the Tochacha. We'll have to go through it again.
So, if we get the message without suffering, then we won't have to go through it.
Some people have custom at the end of after they tell the story at their Seder, B'chol dor v'dor.
Right.
Feel like you went out of Egypt. We just told we have to relive the story, not only out of gratitude, out of destiny. And remembering the Exodus is not just gratitude. It's not just, oh, thank God you saved me. Yishkoach, thank you. Do it again. That's consumer mode. Employee modes, I remember my basic training experience. I remember my suffering. I remember our collective experience. I'm going to internalize that and redeem that and become a better person. And I'll be aware of that all the time. I think some people even mention it twice a day. Remembering the Exodus.
Right.
Remembering the Exodus is 24/7. That's why we say it together with the Shema. It's not gratitude, it's destiny. It's your purpose. It's a way of life. because the Exodus story shapes how you behave as a human being. Always remembering, and it's not only that everyone can take any negative experience they went through and redeem it. Ask any counselor and anything. If you went through trauma, right? I can just take it back on others. I got bullied, you bullied others, or I know what it feels like to be bullied. I won't dare do that to somebody else.
Right.
I did something wrong. I can learn from that negative experience not to do that to others. I don't want other people to make the same mistake again.
Right.
Which is basic in any therapy. But it's also the right thing to do.
Right.
We do that as a nation.
So we redeem our suffering experience by ensuring that others don't suffer.
Right. And that's how we, again, that's saying thank you, that's acting thank you.
Saying thank you?
Yeah. Now,
not saying thank you, but acting thank you. Gotcha.
We said, mention every holiday. How Shemona Esrei begin? V'titin lanu Hashem Elokeinu et Yom, fill in the blank.
Right.
Okay. Yom, that's right. Yom,
Yom,
whatever it is. Okay.
Yom,
Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim.
In memory of leaving Egypt.
That's Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. I understand Chag HaMatzot, Pesach, Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim. Why is Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot? That's Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim. No, that's a mega theme in Chumash that begins with Brit Ben Abtarim, of the idea of learning from experience, redeeming your history, and living a life of kindness and sensitivity to the needs of others.
Wonderful.
So what do we do? In that same chapter, in chapter 8 in Devarim, in Parasha Eikev, Moshe says, remember that experience you went through? Why did I put you through that experience? Because I'm bringing you to a good land, the land of the 7 species, Eretz Chitav, Sorah, Gefen, Tein, Rimon. Because I'm bringing you to a good land. You should read chapter 8, it's awesome. Okay? And a land that has everything you need.
Food and fruit.
Yeah, fruit. Remember the Sheva Minim there. And there it says, V'chalta v'savata berachta. It's eat and say thank you, blessing, but make that a blessing so you can, the greatest blessing is being a blessing to others. Then he says, why did I put you through that? Okay, be careful, you might forget God. Why? If I'm bringing you to a good land, it says, Pen tocha v'savata, ubatim tavim tivne v'asita. You might, all things we pray for might happen. You might become wealthy, build beautiful houses, have great wealth, have kesef v'zahav. Read it in chapter 8, and good for homework.
Right.
If you're after the podcast. You might become wealthy, and in your wealth, right? And everything you have will be just, your stocks will go up, your livestock, everything will be great. And what will you do?
Forget Hashem.
You'll say, Kochi v'otzem yadi aslaita. I did it myself. You'll take yourself the credit, and you'll forget the God who gave you the manna, who put you through the desert. He says, be careful, don't forget that. Don't let prosperity turn to affluence and cause you to forget God. Allow your prosperity, then it says, remember that He gave you the ability, God gave you the ability to be wealthy, and you become a trustee. Right. That's the greatest blessing. You're not, again, that's employee model as opposed to consumer. I'm not shaking a lulav and keeping all these laws and sitting in a sukkah to remember, God make me, let me be a rich man. Remember how the song goes, if I was a rich man. Right? The goal is, if God blesses me with wealth, what do I do with that wealth? How do I sanctify God in the society that I build, in the community that I build? And how do I use my wealth and my prosperity, whatever blessings God blesses me with? And blessing is not only material blessing, it can also be intellectual blessing, social abilities and things like that. There's people who are socially poor. That's the mitzvah of Simchat Yom Tov. Right. The other landing for Shmini Atzeret and Chutz La'aretz. Right. It's not you being happy, it's making other people happy. But Samachta B'chagecha is not you being happy. It's that you're happy because you're a farmer, but the Ger, Yotom, Amana, and the Levite, all the people who don't own land. Right. The Ger, the stranger,
the non-Jewish person, the Yatom, the orphan,
the widow, the Levite doesn't own land. Anyone who doesn't have harvest, right? They feel down. You're happy because you're happy.
Because you got harvest.
Because you have a harvest. So therefore, take your it's Rashi on the spot. If you make my 4 happy, Rashi says, I'll make your 4 happy. If you take care of the Levite, the stranger, the orphan, the widow, I'll take care of you and your family and your kids.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. I feel like we've got a lot there. And now we just got to touch on one thing for Simchat Torah, V'zot HaBracha. And I just, every time...
Oh, I'm sorry. I interrupted you 1 minute.
Okay, go on.
The beauty of Father Rashban says this beautifully. Yeah. He says, we celebrate the Exodus on the 15th of Nisan. That's the anniversary.
Right.
Why am I making a big deal about during my fruit harvest? Remember Chag Asif, at the end of my fruit harvest. Why am I remembering my desert experience then? We were in desert for 40 years. Right. There's no specific date. Now, if the purpose of the desert experience is to make sure prosperity doesn't get to your head, right? Now we have the beautiful balance. Why Sukkot is a double holiday? Because when is the danger of prosperity getting to the greatest? When you have the most prosperity.
Right.
In an agricultural society, when is your prosperity the greatest? At the end of your harvest season, that's when you rack it all in. That's how much money you've made. You know, how many olives do I have? How much grapes do I have? How much wine did I make? How many raisins? How much dried fruit, figs, pomegranates? How much wheat have I stored up, etc. And you can look at your balance sheet. Oh wow, I did so great. Okay? And therefore, at the height of your prosperity, God says, "Remember why I put you through the desert to make sure your prosperity doesn't get to your head." Go leave simple, and therefore the timing is perfect, and that's why you asked me why Sukkot has this double presentation. First we have Sukkot as Sukkot, and then we have the Arba Midim. Then we have it's the holidays repeated twice even. It's the first Sukkot, and then Chag HaAsif on the same days. Is it two holidays on the same days, or is it one holiday with two names? That's
right. So you're referring to the fact that it seems to be that the Sukkot is presented.
And the end of the end of Parasha Gimel, it's repeated in Pasuk Lamed Gimel to Lamed Vav.
Right.
And then a little summary of all of them, and we go. Oh, by the way, Pasuk in 39. Oh, I forgot Sukkot as a Shabbaton and as a Chag HaAsif.
Right.
And then I finish up and go back to Sukkot.
Yeah.
That's how Chumash beautifully blends your historical events with your agriculture.
Right.
Learn from your history. And that's
so
why
which one is historical? Which one is agricultural?
Remembering your desert experience is historical. Remembering Exodus is historical. The agricultural is your grain harvest and your fruit harvest at the end of the year. And during the critical times of the agricultural year,
you say like Ach b'chamisha asar layom l'chodesh hashvi bas
b'chemet v'ot haaretz.
On the 15th day of the 7th month, when you gathered the yield of your land. So that's referring to the
agricultural side. And then it says, but then earlier called it Sukkot, and then when I finish this up, then Sukkot tesh v'shivat yamim l'mani du dorotechem.
Right.
It's like a sandwich.
So it identifies the fact that Sukkot is two separate ideas. It's the historical and the agricultural, but it puts them together to say the reason that we are doing these two kind of ideas in one is because the most important time to remember the historical message.
Also, the purpose of the desert experience.
The purpose of the desert experience, which is that you were vulnerable, you were dependent on others, so you should take care of the people that depend on others. That is most important to remember at the height of the agricultural cycle.
When your prosperity is the greatest.
When your prosperity is the greatest, and you've got the greatest challenge of prosperity, which is taking it all for yourself and not sharing it, and thinking that you get it all.
Now, for homework, apply that when you're not living in an agricultural society. It's easy to do.
Yeah.
No, that's a chumrah. No, that you have to think on your own how to take that theme behind it, how to apply it in an industrial society, how to apply it in a high-tech society. You know, how do you take those blessings of what you're blessed with, and how do you use those things to build a better society?
So we still have, thank God, in a lot of places, a lot of times, the blessing of affluence or the challenge of affluence. And so we need to still use that and still learn these key and important messages. Wow. Shkoch Rav Leibtag, I really appreciate you taking the time. I learned a lot of things from you today. I've learned how you became a Tanakh scholar. That was pretty cool, by accident, and through some amazing teachers. I learned a bit about your method, insisting on objective analysis and then admitting and allowing for subjective opinion and finding the meaning. Don't search for chidushim. First, try to get the
let them find you.
Let them find you. Nice.
Search for understanding.
Right. And first, looking at when we're looking at the Chagim and Sukkot, so looking at first at Shemot and the idea of the role of that reading to be in the aftermath of the golden calf, to say even after you sin, God still wants to see you. The role of that shor or kesev ki yivaled, and that section in the beginning of the chapter 22, or the end of chapter 22, of the beginning of the reading that we do on Sukkot, saying the thematic ending to that is the reason that we bring it in, because it ties in the connection to the covenant and the idea of
why God put you in Egypt to take you out.
Right. And that connects us to the idea of we don't just say thank you, we need to act thank you. We want to use what God gives us as tools to serve Hashem. That way we can, instead of, we can utilize the suffering, we can redeem our suffering that we've been through to help others, and so that we shouldn't have to keep suffering. We can avoid suffering by getting the message without it. And the best blessing for our food is to be a blessing to others.
That's what God told Abraham, right? The bracha. Abraham's blessing in the beginning is to be a blessing.
Right. Once we know what it feels like to be dependent, then to take care of those people that are dependent. Wow. Thank you so much. I've really loved this discussion. I'm Rav Mordechai Rosenberg, learning here with Rav Menachem Leibtag. If you've enjoyed, please like and subscribe, share with your friends.
And send questions.
And send us questions. We're keen to have some of your questions. And looking forward to seeing you next week. Chag Sameach.